The first strike. Hook. The sky above Earth was burning. The world had never seen anything like this before. Across the globe, cities were engulfed in flames. Alien ships, massive and relentless, filled the sky. Their ships were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Sleek, shining with dark, metallic surfaces, and bristling with weapons capable of wiping out entire cities in a single strike. The human race was not prepared for an invasion like this. In the chaos, the world's military tried to fight back, but their efforts were futile. The alien ships seemed invincible, their advanced technology easily outmatching anything the humans had. Every missile that was launched was swatted away like an insect by a powerful force field. Every airstrike fell short. The aliens seemed unstoppable. While governments and military leaders scrambled to make sense of the attack, a small group of people watched from the shadows. They weren't soldiers, they weren't trained warriors. They were just ordinary citizens, angry and frustrated at the helplessness of the situation. They had seen their cities fall, their homes destroyed, and their families scattered. These people had nothing left to lose, and they were about to do something that no one expected. One of them was Jack, just an average mechanic, not a hero by any stretch of the imagination. He had spent his days working on engines, fixing machines. But now, as he stood in the wreckage of his destroyed home, watching the alien ships in the sky, something inside him snapped. His family was gone. His friends were gone. And the world he once knew was being torn apart. "Enough is enough," Jack muttered under his breath, clenching his fists. Beside him stood Eva, a former software engineer turned tech expert. She had spent her life building systems to protect data, but now there was no data to protect, only survival. She was angry too, but her anger was different from Jack's. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure the world had a future. They both knew that if they didn't act now, there might be no Earth left to fight for. "Jack," Eva said, her voice low but filled with urgency. "We can't sit here. We have to do something." Jack nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something bigger. It wasn't just about fixing engines anymore. It was about fixing the world. They had no training, no real weapons, no way of knowing what they were up against. But they had one thing the aliens didn't: their anger and their determination to survive. "Where do we even start?" Eva asked, scanning the sky as another wave of alien ships flew overhead. Jack turned to her, his mind racing. "We start by taking the fight to them. We're not going to let them destroy everything." But how? Neither Jack nor Eva had any military experience. They didn't know how to take down alien ships or even how to protect themselves from their advanced weapons. They were ordinary people caught in an extraordinary situation. Still, there was no time for doubt. They had to act now, or humanity was doomed. "Jack," Eva said, a flicker of an idea crossing her mind. "I've been studying their ships. The designs. The technology. I think I can hack into one of their systems. If we can find a way to disable their shields, we might have a chance." Jack's eyes widened. Eva was smart, and she had the skills, but it seemed almost impossible. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized there was no other choice. "You're saying we can take one of their ships?" Jack asked, incredulous. Eva's gaze was steady. "I'm saying we have to. We can't just sit here and wait to die. We need to fight back, Jack. If we want to stand a chance, we have to hit them where it hurts." Jack stared at the alien ships, his fists still clenched in fury. He wasn't sure how they would do it, but one thing was clear: this was their only shot. "I'm in," he said, his voice resolute. "Let's do it." The plan was simple, at least, that's what Jack hoped. They would steal an alien ship. Eva would hack into its system and disable the shields, and they would use the ship's weapons to launch a counterattack on the alien fleet. It sounded reckless, but at that moment, it seemed like the only thing they could do. They knew it wouldn't be easy. The alien ships were far superior to anything humanity had, and even if they managed to get their hands on one of the ships, there was no guarantee they would be able to control it. But they had no other option. Their backs were against the wall. As Jack and Eva prepared to carry out their plan, they were joined by others, ordinary citizens like them, who were sick of watching their world crumble. They were angry. Angry at the aliens for invading their home. Angry at the governments that had failed them. And angry that no one else seemed willing to take a stand. Together, they would be humanity's last hope. With one final glance at the sky, Jack took a deep breath and turned toward the nearest alien ship. The first strike was about to begin. The unlikely alliance. The sound of the alien ships hovering above the city was deafening. The once bustling metropolis was now a war zone. Destruction was everywhere. Buildings were reduced to rubble, and fires burned out of control. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The citizens who hadn't fled or been caught in the chaos were hiding in basements, trying to stay alive. But in one of the darkest corners of the city, Jack, Eva, and the others had begun their daring plan. They knew it wouldn't be easy, and they were far from prepared. But something inside them told them that if they didn't take action now, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. Jack, Eva, and a small group of survivors had gathered in an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. They were a strange team, ordinary civilians with no military experience, but they shared one common goal: to save their planet. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they were determined to try. Eva was the first to speak. She paced back and forth in front of the others, trying to figure out how to make the plan work. She had spent her life working with computers, but this was something entirely different. "We need to get our hands on one of their ships," Eva said, her voice steady but tense. "If I can hack into their systems, we might be able to disable their shields long enough to take them down." "But how are we going to get close to them?" asked Sarah, a young woman who had joined their group. "They're everywhere. They'll shoot us down before we even get close." Jack stepped forward, his face hard with determination. "We need to be smart about this. We'll have to find a way to get to the nearest alien ship without drawing attention. Once we're inside, Eva can do her thing." There was silence in the room as the group exchanged looks. The plan sounded reckless, but at this point, it was their only option. They couldn't just wait around and let the aliens destroy everything. They had to act. "What if we don't make it?" asked Jean, an ex-soldier who had been living in hiding after the initial alien invasion. His eyes were heavy with worry, but his voice was steady. "We'll be walking right into their hands. We've seen how fast they can wipe us out." Jack looked at John and then at the others. His mind raced, but deep down, he knew they had no choice. "I know the risks," Jack said, "but if we don't do this, it's over for humanity. If we can take one of their ships, even for just a few minutes, we might stand a chance." John nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "All right, let's do it. We've got one shot at this." The group spent the next few hours preparing. They gathered whatever weapons they could find, scavenged supplies, and mapped out the closest alien ship locations. They knew that stealth would be their best chance of survival. If they were caught, there was no doubt they would be destroyed. Eva's fingers flew over a makeshift computer as she tapped into various alien communication networks. She had found a weakness in the alien systems, a gap in their security that could be exploited. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give them an edge. She had no idea if it would work, but it was their only chance. "All right, we're ready," Eva said, her voice tense. "Let's move out." The team gathered their weapons, checked their gear, and began their journey toward the alien ships. They moved quickly, staying in the shadows and avoiding the alien patrols that flew overhead. Their hearts raced with every step they took. The city, once familiar and safe, now felt like an enemy. Every corner held danger, and the alien ships loomed overhead like giant, menacing shadows. As they approached the nearest alien ship, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. They had made it this far, but they weren't out of danger yet. The alien ships were massive, each one the size of a small city, bristling with weapons and shields. The closer they got, the more terrifying the reality of the situation became. "We need to get in close," Jack whispered. "Eva, are you ready?" Eva gave him a quick nod, her face pale but determined. She had spent hours studying the alien technology, and she was ready. They had one chance to infiltrate the ship and disable its systems long enough for them to get away. If they failed, they would be caught, and the whole mission would be lost. They slipped through the wreckage of the city and reached the base of the alien ship, hidden beneath a layer of smog and darkness. The ship loomed before them, silent and ominous. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as they made their way toward the ship's underbelly, where an access hatch was hidden. "Keep quiet," Eva murmured. "If we can get inside, I can hack into their system." Jack motioned for everyone to stay low as they approached the hatch. They had to be careful. If the aliens noticed them, it would be all over. But they couldn't turn back now. They had to try. With a deep breath, Jack placed his hand on the hatch and began to push. It creaked open, revealing a dark, metallic interior. The smell of burnt metal filled the air as they crawled inside, hearts racing. Once inside, Eva quickly set to work, connecting a small device she had crafted to the ship's systems. She could feel the alien technology pulsing around her, humming with an unnatural energy. She was out of her depth, but she was determined to succeed. "I'm in," Eva whispered. "Give me a moment." As the seconds stretched into minutes, the tension inside the ship was palpable. They could hear the sounds of alien footsteps outside the ship, searching for them. Jack's hand gripped his weapon tightly, ready for anything. He knew the aliens were close, but they had no choice but to move forward. Finally, Eva's voice broke through the silence. "I've disabled their shields, but it won't last long. We need to get out of here, now." Jack's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. With a final glance at the group, he nodded. "Let's move." The fight within the ship. The moment they stepped into the heart of the alien vessel, everything seemed to change. The cold, metallic interior swallowed them whole. The low hum of the ship's engine reverberated through the floor, a constant reminder that they were inside something far beyond anything Earth had ever known. The walls were slick and smooth, with strange, glowing symbols running across them, as if the ship itself was alive. Jack's pulse raced as he signaled to the others to stay close. Eva led the way, her fingers moving quickly over a small device she had attached to her wrist. It was a crude hack, but it was all they had. She whispered under her breath, trying to connect it to the alien systems and hold off any alarm triggers. "We don't have much time," she murmured. "The moment they realize we're here, they'll send everything they have after us." Jack gave her a tight nod, his thoughts racing. They needed to disable the ship's main reactor or take down the ship's defenses before they could get out. He couldn't help but feel like a weight was pressing on his chest. He had no idea how to fight against such advanced technology. These aliens had been devastating Earth for weeks. Their ships had wiped out entire armies with ease. Now it was up to a group of civilians to stop them. "Where do we go?" Sarah, one of the survivors, asked in a hushed voice, looking around nervously. She was clutching a rifle in both hands, her eyes scanning every corner for signs of movement. Eva glanced at the ship's schematics on her device and then pointed toward a hallway that stretched deep into the belly of the ship. "Down that way," she said. "There's a control room, maybe even a weapons system. If we can get there and disable their shields, we might have a chance of taking this ship down." Jack motioned for the group to move quickly, keeping their heads low. The silence was eerie, and every step they took felt like it might alert the aliens. They couldn't afford to get caught now, not when they were so close. But it didn't take long for the tension to break. As they rounded a corner, the sudden flash of lights startled them. The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate, and a loud mechanical sound echoed through the halls. The alarms had been triggered. "Get ready," Jack barked, signaling the group to take cover. Before they could react, the aliens appeared. They were towering figures, their bodies encased in dark, sleek armor that almost seemed to blend with the walls of the ship. Their weapons, long, glowing energy rifles, were pointed at the group within seconds. The aliens' eyes glowed a soft, menacing blue, and they didn't hesitate to fire. Jack's heart raced as he instinctively grabbed the nearest weapon, a laser gun he had grabbed from the armory. He pulled the trigger, sending a pulse of energy streaking through the air. The alien soldiers were quick to react, raising their weapons in unison. Gunfire filled the air. "Eva," Jack shouted, looking over his shoulder. "We need to disable the shields now. We can't fight these things head-on." Eva was already ahead of him, her face tight with concentration as she worked frantically on her device. "I'm almost there. Just give me a few more seconds." The aliens were relentless. Every time Jack shot at one, another seemed to appear from the shadows, and their firepower was overwhelming. The group huddled behind cover, firing back in an effort to keep the aliens at bay. John, the ex-soldier, had taken up a position near the rear, using his training to keep the aliens from flanking them. He fired his rifle with deadly accuracy, picking off one of the alien soldiers as it charged. But for every one they took down, two more appeared. "How much longer, Eva?" Jack yelled, his voice strained as he ducked behind a column, narrowly avoiding an energy blast that singed the wall next to him. Just a little more," Eva replied, her fingers moving at lightning speed over her device. She was hacking into the ship's core systems, bypassing security layers one by one. Sweat trickled down her forehead as the tension mounted. Time was running out. Jack's eyes darted to the alien soldiers, who were now beginning to move in closer. He could feel the weight of their weapons bearing down on him. They couldn't keep this up much longer. There was no way they would survive this, unless they took action now. Then, just as things seemed at their most hopeless, Eva spoke. "I've got it," she shouted, her voice a mix of triumph and exhaustion. "Shields down. We can hit them now." "Now, John, take out their main guns," Jack yelled. Without missing a beat, John sprinted toward the far side of the ship, where the alien weapons systems were housed. With Eva's system hack disabling the shields, the ship was now vulnerable. But it was also exposed. As John reached the weapons system, he set up explosives, ready to detonate. "We've got seconds," John shouted back, looking at the countdown timer on the explosives. "Everyone, get back to the entrance. Now." The group sprinted back through the corridors, barely dodging the alien gunfire. The ship's walls seemed to close in on them, but there was no time to stop. Every moment felt like an eternity as they ran, the ship's interior seeming to tremble as the countdown ticked down. They reached the ship's hatch just as the timer hit 0. A massive explosion shook the ship, sending a wave of energy through the structure. The sound was deafening, and the blast sent them all crashing to the ground. Jack's vision swam as he struggled to stand. The alien ship was shaking violently now, the walls cracking and groaning under the pressure. But the group had done it. The ship's weapons were destroyed, and its shields were down. The impossible had been achieved. But as Jack stumbled to his feet, a cold realization set in. They had only just begun. This was only one ship. The aliens would send more, and they would be ready. "We're not done yet," Jack said, his voice low but determined. "We've got a long way to go." The escape plan. The explosion rocked the ship. Jack's ears rang from the blast, and the floor beneath him seemed to shift. A cloud of smoke and dust filled the air, making it difficult to see. For a moment, everything felt like it was spinning. The walls of the alien vessel groaned, as if the entire structure was about to collapse. "Move. Now," Jack shouted, his voice hoarse, but full of urgency. He had no idea how long they had before the ship completely fell apart, but they couldn't afford to waste time. Eva was the first to regain her balance, her face pale but determined. She quickly grabbed her device and glanced around. "The ship's reactor is going critical," she said, her voice shaking slightly from the intensity of the moment. "If we don't get out of here in time, we won't just be fighting aliens. We'll be dealing with a massive explosion that will level this entire part of the city." The others scrambled to their feet, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The fight wasn't over yet. Now it was about getting out alive. "Where do we go?" Sarah asked, eyes wide with panic. "How do we escape?" "We head for the emergency exit on the lower deck," Jack ordered, his mind working quickly. He knew the ship's layout from the data Eva had pulled earlier. The emergency escape pods were located just a few levels down, near the rear of the ship. If they could get there, they might have a shot at escaping. "Let's move," Jack said, taking the lead. The group rushed through the corridors, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The ship was in chaos. Lights flickered, and strange mechanical noises echoed all around them as the structure began to fail. Alien soldiers were still on their tail, and Jack could hear the sound of their footsteps growing louder as they hunted for the intruders. "Keep going," Jack shouted. He could feel the weight of every second ticking away. Every corner they turned, every door they opened, was one step closer to their escape, or their demise. Suddenly, a door ahead of them slammed open, and a pair of alien soldiers stepped into view. They were armed and ready for a fight. The group had no choice but to take cover behind a nearby column, the aliens unaware of their presence, for now. Eva quickly pulled out a small device from her bag, a makeshift EMP grenade. "I can knock out their weapons," she whispered. "Give us a few seconds." "Do it," Jack urged. Eva tossed the EMP grenade into the hallway. There was a small flash and a low hum as it activated, and in an instant, the alien soldiers' weapons powered down. The soldiers, momentarily stunned, looked down at their rifles, confused. They didn't have much time. "Go. Now," Jack shouted. The group dashed forward, weapons in hand, staying low and moving quickly. They didn't stop to fight. Their goal was the escape pods. They could deal with the rest later. As they neared the lower deck, they could feel the vibrations growing more intense. The ship's instability was becoming more apparent. A massive clang rang out, and a section of the ship's hull tore open, exposing the vacuum of space for a brief moment before the emergency doors slammed shut to seal the breach. They were close. Jack could see the escape pods just ahead, but as they turned the corner, they were met with a horrifying sight. Several alien soldiers had blocked the path. "We're pinned down," Sarah shouted, her voice shaking with fear. Jack cursed under his breath. They had no choice now. They had to fight. "Take cover," Jack shouted, signaling the group to spread out. The aliens were closing in fast, but they didn't have the numbers to overwhelm them. Jack had to trust that they could fight their way through. Sarah fired first, taking down one of the alien soldiers with a well-aimed shot. John, with his military background, followed suit, sending another alien to the ground. But the aliens weren't easy to defeat. They moved with precision, their armor almost impervious to human weapons. Every time the humans managed to land a hit, the aliens adjusted, their tactics becoming more aggressive. Jack's heart pounded as he fired, narrowly avoiding a deadly energy blast. His mind was racing. How were they going to survive this? Then, through the chaos, Eva stepped forward, her eyes locked on the group of aliens. She had one shot at this. She quickly hacked into the ship's control systems once more, tapping furiously on her device. She was attempting to override the ship's internal security. If she could disable the internal defenses just long enough, they could make it to the pods. "I can disable their armor systems temporarily," she shouted over the gunfire. "But you need to cover me." "Do it," Jack yelled. Eva's fingers flew over the device, and suddenly, the alien's armor glitched. For a brief moment, they were vulnerable. The group took advantage of this, opening fire with everything they had. The aliens staggered, their shields flickering in and out as their armor systems malfunctioned. In those precious seconds, they made their move. Jack and John sprinted toward the escape pods, while Sarah and Eva covered their retreat. The final push was a blur. The group dove into the nearest pod, and Eva was the last to enter, just as the alien soldiers regained their composure. The hatch slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside. For a split second, there was silence. Then, with a loud rumble, the pod detached from the ship. They were free. The explosion from the alien ship had already started, a brilliant flash of light visible through the small windows of the pod. They had narrowly escaped destruction. But as the pod sped away into the vastness of space, Jack's thoughts were already racing ahead. They had survived this fight, but the war was far from over. The aliens would be coming for Earth again, and next time they wouldn't be caught off guard. "We live to fight another day," Jack muttered, staring out at the empty void of space. "And next time, we fight back." The dark truth uncovered. The escape pod rocketed away from the alien ship, its engines humming as it sped through the vast expanse of space. Inside, the group sat in tense silence, each of them processing the events that had just unfolded. They had survived, but they knew it wasn't over. The war was only beginning, and the threat from the alien forces was far from finished. Jack sat at the control panel, staring at the readouts. The pod's trajectory was set, but his mind raced. He couldn't stop thinking about the aliens, their ruthless efficiency, their overwhelming power. The ship they had just escaped from was only one of many. It was clear that the invasion was far from over. Eva was still catching her breath from the hack she had pulled off. She was staring at her device, her face pale as she scrolled through the data she had collected from the alien ship. As she scanned the information, her fingers froze. "Jack, you need to see this," Eva said, her voice low and uneasy. Jack looked over at her, his brow furrowing. He stood and walked over to where she sat, her eyes wide with something between disbelief and horror. "What is it?" Jack asked, his voice steady but laced with concern. Eva handed him the device, pointing to the screen. "It's a map, but not just any map. It's showing coordinates for every major city on Earth. They've marked targets." Jack's stomach dropped. He stared at the map, seeing the familiar locations of cities around the world highlighted in red. His eyes scanned the data as he tried to make sense of it. "They're planning something," Eva continued, her voice shaking. "They're not just attacking. They've been planning for this. The invasion, the destruction. It's all mapped out. Every city, every major military base. They're targeting humanity's last strongholds." Jack's mind raced as he processed the information. The aliens weren't just here for resources or conquest. They had a plan, and it was one that would leave humanity with nowhere to run. "We need to warn the world," Jack said, a sense of urgency rising in his chest. "We can't fight back unless the world knows what's coming." But as he turned to look at the rest of the group, he saw that they were all just as stunned as he was. The realization hit them all at once. There was nowhere left to hide. If they wanted to survive, they would need to unite the world's scattered forces and prepare for the next battle. Sarah, who had been silent for most of the journey, spoke up, her voice tense. "But how? How do we even begin to stop this? They're too powerful." Jack looked at her and then at the others. He didn't have an answer. The odds seemed impossible, but they couldn't give up now. Not when they had come this far. He didn't care how overwhelming the aliens were. Humanity had fought against the impossible before. "We start by making sure they never see us coming," Jack said, his voice hard with resolve. "We'll strike when they least expect it. We'll take the fight to them." Eva nodded slowly, still scrolling through the data. "There's more," she said. This isn't just an invasion force. They're building something big. A weapon." "A weapon?" Jack repeated, his mind racing. What kind of weapon? Eva paused before answering. I don't know, but based on the energy signatures I've been able to track, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not just a ship or a bomb. It's something that could end humanity in one strike. Jack clenched his fists. He couldn't let that happen. He wouldn't let it happen. We need to find it, Jack said, his tone fierce. If we don't stop that weapon, everything we fought for will be for nothing. John, who had been silent up until now, spoke up. We know they're operating from a central command ship. If we can locate that ship, we can find the weapon. Eva's eyes widened as she pulled up more data. The central command ship is located deep within their fleet, protected by layers of defense. But I can pinpoint its location. We can track it. Jack stood up, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This was it. The true fight for humanity's survival had begun. The aliens weren't just a threat to Earth. They were a threat to the very survival of the human race. We need to hit them hard and fast, Jack said, determination in his eyes. We don't have time to waste. Every second counts. The group nodded in agreement, the gravity of their mission settling in. They had made it this far, but the real battle was just beginning. They would need to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than ever before. The pod's navigation system beeped, signaling their arrival at the nearest safe station, a remote space station orbiting Earth. It was time to regroup, gather supplies, and prepare for the next phase of their mission. They would need all the help they could get. The rest of humanity needed to wake up and understand the danger they were facing before it was too late. As the pod docked with the space station, Jack stood at the window, staring out into the dark void of space. The alien fleet was out there, waiting. But Jack wasn't afraid. He knew one thing for certain. If anyone was going to turn the tide in this war, it was going to be the humans who had been underestimated. Let's do this, Jack muttered to himself, his fists clenched with resolve. We're not going down without a fight. The hunt for the command ship. The space station docked with a quiet mechanical hum, its metallic arms reaching out to latch onto the pod. Jack, still feeling the weight of the looming threat, stood in front of the viewport, staring out into the dark expanse of space. The station ahead was their temporary refuge, but the thought of the alien weapon, built to obliterate Earth in a single strike, hung heavily on his mind. Let's get this over with, Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His voice was firm, but the underlying tension was clear. The battle ahead would determine the future of humanity. Eva, Sarah, John, and the rest of the group quickly moved to gather their gear, preparing for the next phase of their mission. This space station, though remote, was humanity's last hope for survival. It was their only chance to regroup, assess their situation, and figure out their next move. Eva, any luck with the ship's coordinates? Jack asked, turning to her as she worked at the station's control panel, her eyes scanning the data she'd extracted from the alien ship. She didn't look up. I've pinpointed the location of their central command ship. It's deep within the enemy's fleet, surrounded by layers of defenses. Getting to it will be like walking into the lion's den. John, ever the strategist, leaned over her shoulder. How long do we have until they realize we're hunting them down? Not long, Eva replied, her fingers flying over the console. I've triggered some alarms by hacking their system. If they didn't know we were coming before, they definitely do now. They'll be moving their forces to intercept us. Jack cursed under his breath. Time was not on their side. We don't have a choice, Jack said, turning to face his team. We have to go after that command ship. If we don't, they'll continue their assault on Earth without a second thought. But how do we get past their defenses? Sarah asked, her eyes filled with uncertainty. We don't have the firepower to take on their fleet head-on. Jack paused for a moment, weighing the situation in his mind. The odds seemed impossible, but they had no choice. The only way to stop the alien weapon from being deployed was to take down the command ship. We don't fight them conventionally, Jack said, a steely determination in his eyes. We're going to use their own tactics against them. We'll hit them where they least expect it." Eva, still absorbed in her calculations, looked up at him with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. "And how exactly do you plan on doing that?" Jack's lips curled into a grim smile. "We take a small strike team and board their ship directly. We sabotage their weapon from the inside." John raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we infiltrate their command ship with just a few of us?" "Yes," Jack replied firmly. "We'll use their overconfidence to our advantage. They think they've won, but that's the mistake we'll exploit." The group exchanged nervous glances. The idea of infiltrating the heart of the alien fleet was audacious, but Jack had never been one to back down from a challenge. "We'll need to get close enough to board the command ship without being detected," Jack continued. "That means we'll need a distraction, something big enough to draw their attention away from us." "I can create a diversion," Eva said quickly. "I've been working on a way to hack into their communication systems. I can cause a system-wide disruption, enough to scramble their sensors and get us close without being spotted." Jack nodded, impressed by her quick thinking. "Perfect. We'll use that window to board their ship and plant explosives in their weapon systems." "Explosives?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with doubt. "We've only got limited supplies. How can we be sure the ship's weapon is close enough for us to destroy it?" Jack turned to face Sarah. "We don't have time for second-guessing. If we don't succeed, Earth is done for. We'll make it work." The team spent the next few hours preparing. They gathered everything they would need for the mission: light armor, weapons, and a few small explosive charges. Their escape route would depend on timing, and everyone knew that failure meant death. They couldn't afford mistakes. As they climbed into the sleek stealth shuttle that would carry them toward the heart of the alien fleet, the tension among the group was palpable. There was no turning back now. They were about to make the final, desperate push to save humanity. The shuttle's engines hummed quietly as it left the station, blending into the shadow of the larger space debris surrounding them. Eva's fingers flew over her console as she began to hack into the alien communication network, the screen in front of her flashing with lines of code. "They won't know what hit them," Eva said, her voice a little more confident now. "I've got access to their fleet's internal network. I'll scramble their sensors in 5 minutes." Jack turned to face his team, his expression intense. "Once we're in position, we move quickly. No heroics. We sabotage the weapon, get back to the shuttle, and get out of there." The others nodded. The plan was as simple as it was dangerous, and they all knew the odds of success were slim. As the shuttle inched closer to the heart of the alien fleet, the sheer size of the enemy's warships was overwhelming. It was clear that the aliens were preparing for a major assault. Large, sleek vessels swarmed around the command ship like sentinels, their weapons pointed outward, ready to strike. "We're almost there," Eva said, her voice tight with concentration. "I'm going to scramble their radar now." Jack gave the order to hold their position, watching as the massive alien ships loomed ahead. The shuttle's cloaking technology made it nearly invisible, but it wouldn't last long once the sensors were scrambled. They had to act fast. Eva tapped a final command, and suddenly the sensors on the alien ships blinked and flickered. The larger ships began to veer off course, confused by the disruption. "This is our window," Jack said. "Let's go." The shuttle darted forward, moving with purpose as they closed the gap between them and the command ship. The tension inside the shuttle was suffocating. Each second felt like an eternity. They were so close now. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. The final confrontation. The shuttle lurked in the shadows, invisible to the naked eye, but no less tense. Jack stared at the massive alien command ship ahead. It was just a few hundred meters away, but to him, it felt like an eternity. The rest of the team remained silent, eyes fixed on the impending mission that could either secure humanity's survival or seal its doom. The entire galaxy's fate rested on their shoulders. Eva was still working furiously at the control panel, her fingers tapping the console with precision. "We're in," "Their systems are still scrambled," she reported, glancing at Jack. "But we don't have much time. The radar disruption will only last for a few minutes." Jack nodded. "Once we board, we're going in fast. No delays. Eva, you're with me on the weapons systems. Sarah, John, take the ship's bridge. Disable their command center and make sure they can't contact reinforcements." The team nodded in agreement. There was no time for hesitation. They were here, and they had a job to do. Humanity's last hope depended on them striking swiftly and silently. The shuttle's engines powered down as they silently approached the exterior of the alien command ship. Jack looked at the small team gathered in front of him. His voice was low but full of conviction. "This is it. Stick together, stay focused, and we'll get out of here. We don't fail today." Eva's face was tense, her eyes not meeting his. "Just don't forget, Jack," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "If we don't succeed, the aliens will finish what they started. Earth won't stand a chance." "I won't forget," Jack replied, his voice unwavering. "We've come this far. We're not turning back." With that, the shuttle gently connected with the side of the alien ship. The team moved with military precision, donning helmets and checking their weapons. As the hatch opened, a cold draft from the alien ship greeted them, and the team slipped into the darkened corridors. The inside of the command ship was eerily silent. The crew was nowhere to be seen, no guards, no patrols. The alien ship, once full of bustling activity, now felt like a ghost ship. They had no idea where the aliens were or if they were already waiting for them. But they had no time to dwell on it. Every moment counted. Eva led the way down the sterile hallways, using the data she had collected earlier to navigate. The dim red lighting gave the whole place an ominous atmosphere. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the silence, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He gripped his weapon tightly, prepared for anything. After what seemed like an eternity, they'd reached their first checkpoint, the control room. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a small group of aliens at a console, working tirelessly. They didn't notice the human invaders at first, lost in their tasks. Jack signaled for Sarah and John to move in. They sprang into action, silently taking out the aliens one by one. In just a few moments, the control room was secured. The team moved quickly, gathering intel on the location of the weapon. "We need to go deeper," Eva said urgently. "The weapon is being held in a secure room below the main deck." Jack nodded. "Then that's where we're going. Stay sharp." They moved forward, entering a series of tight corridors that led down toward the heart of the ship. Every moment felt like an eternity, but they finally reached the door to the weapons chamber. The door was heavily reinforced with thick metal, and it was clear that this was the ship's most secure area. They would need to find a way in, and fast. Eva stepped forward, hacking into the door's security systems. "I've got this," she said, her fingers dancing over the console. "Just give me a few more seconds." The seconds stretched on, feeling like hours, and the tension was unbearable. They could hear the distant hum of alien footsteps in the hallways, and Jack's grip tightened on his gun. He knew they couldn't afford to be caught. Finally, with a soft peep, the door to the weapon chamber slid open. Inside was the terrifying sight of the alien weapon, an enormous energy cannon, thrumming with power. It was surrounded by advanced technology and alien machinery. The weapon looked like something out of a nightmare, but Jack couldn't afford to hesitate. He had one goal in mind: destroy it. "Place the explosives," Jack ordered, his voice steady but urgent. Eva quickly moved to the side, carefully placing small charges on the weapon's core. John and Sarah stood guard, keeping an eye on the entrance. They couldn't afford any surprises. But as they finished placing the charges, Jack heard a sound, a low, ominous hum. He spun around, instinctively reaching for his weapon. The air seemed to grow thick, and suddenly, the doors slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside. A voice, cold and mechanical, echoed through the chamber. You cannot stop us, humans. Jack's heart pounded as he realized what had just happened. The aliens had anticipated this move. The room was a trap. The weapon began to power up, the energy core glowing brighter and brighter. Jack's mind raced. They were running out of time. "Eva," he shouted, "how long until the charges are ready?" Eva's face was pale as she worked frantically. I need more time. The systems locked me out." Jack's mind raced. They didn't have time for delays. The weapon was almost ready to fire. Suddenly, Sarah looked up. "Wait, look at this." Jack turned to see Sarah pointing at a console in the corner of the room. It wasn't just a trap, it was a countdown to the weapon's full activation. "We need to shut it down now," Jack shouted. "Eva, do whatever it takes." Eva looked back at him, her face filled with determination. "I can do it. Just keep those aliens off me for a few more seconds." The seconds felt like minutes as Jack and the others fought off waves of alien soldiers that appeared in the doorway. The tension was unbearable, and Jack's heart raced as he waited for Eva to finish. Finally, Eva slammed her hands on the console, and the countdown halted. The weapon powered down, its hum fading into silence. "We did it," she whispered, looking up at Jack. But the victory was short-lived. The aliens knew they had failed, and the battle outside the room was only just beginning. The true fight was still to come, but for now, humanity had survived. The countdown to the destruction of Earth had been stopped. Jack stood tall, his face grim but resolute. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over.